Okay. So Justin Kim's going to talk to you about his piece, his process, and how he kind of got to where he is.
So I chose the Korean theme, and this is my big pot right here. And we've been working on these for pretty much the whole year. And I'm gonna walk with you like step by step through the process that I went through to get from like nothing to this giant thing. So we all started off at the same place, which is we watched PowerPoint. Mr. T gave us like the whole spiel in class that he just gave to you guys, and from there on we got to choose the countries that we want to do. And obviously, since I'm Korean, I chose the Korean design. And from there, there's actually two different types of Korean design that I was looking at. And the one that he had on the PowerPoint was Celadon, which is like this green color. So Celadon is characteristic because this is like the Celadon color, and that originated in Southeast Asia. And so that's what I sort of went for. But there's also porcelain, which is this blue on white, and is sort of what pops into mind when you think of like China plates and stuff. And so after we chose our countries, we did the shape, and you might have seen that he had the shapes on the PowerPoint, and he gave us this website to go to that had a bunch of these shape designs on it. And so I sort of messed around with shapes, and he had us do this little activity where there's this black paper called tar paper. I don't know what it is, but he had us cut out different unique shapes to think about what we wanted to do in regards to our pods. And after we did these cutouts, we went through and made these tiny models, like they're seriously just tiny models, to sort of mess around more with the more 3D aspect of the shapes as well. And after doing that, I sort of just went home and I Googled Korean celadon pots, and I did some more research and looked at what sort of forms they had, and this is one of the forms of types of pots they had. So after determining the shape, we went into the design portion of our pots, and so this actually took me a long time because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And you can see here, I sort of went through and I went online and I looked at different designs that were on like these Google images for pots, and I sort of just sketched them down into my sketchbook. And then from there, I sort of looked at what I thought I might like on my pot and how to transform it to make it into something that was more individualized, that was something that was more mine. And so some of the things that I ran into were cranes, flowers, and a dragon. Now, I was thinking about putting a dragon on my pot, but it just seemed way too difficult. And what I ended up doing is that, well, you can sort of see it, but there's these flowers that run around the whole pot, and it's actually the Korean national flower that I saw a picture of, and I thought it would just be really cool to use this flower to design my pot, and that runs around the pot and is carved in. And so there's also borders. I don't know if you saw it on the screen, but there's like the different designs and what they mean, and there's these borders that represent the sun on the top and bottom of my pot. And so after determining what design I wanted to use, we went into the modeling process. So this is the model that I had. We make it, there's two different types of clay that we use. There's this brown clay that's cheaper and more people use it, but it's a little weaker than this white clay that we end up using for the large pots. But we made our models with this brown clay, and basically I just use this to play with the shape a little more and to think about what designs I wanted to do. And then later on, I'll tell you more about how I use this as a glaze tester as well. So after making the model and sort of getting this done with, I haven't glazed it yet. I started looking at the dimensions of what I wanted to do. And so to scale, I got a ruler, and in my sketchbook, I sort of just made these and just played with the scale a little bit. And then from there on, we had to scale it up. So just some simple math to get it up to the proper scale. And after that, we made these wooden cutouts. So we spent a little bit of time on this, and what these wooden cutouts are for is that we're supposed to build within this inner border. Like, this should have been the size of the actual pot. Now, you'll notice that these pots actually shrink a ton during the drying and firing process, but this is what I used to sort of guide my pot while I was building it up. So after we got this done with, we started building with the actual clay. So we have this roller over here, and basically we started out by rolling out these slabs, and then we cut a circle, and we just sort of plop that down on one of these large boards, and we covered the bottom in this like sandy, gritty stuff called grog in order to make sure that the bottom wouldn't crack. And from there, we built up. In the back, you can't see it, but there's this device that you shove clay into, and there's a lever that you just pull it down, and it pushes out coils for you. And so we made the coils that way, and then we used the coils to build up layer by layer the pot. And then as we went on, we'd also have to smooth it out and make sure that it was structurally sound. And during this whole process, because this took like this super long time, we had to keep the clay wet with these trash bags that we cut and we tape over our pots. And I personally use this bed sheet that I would like soak in water, and I would cover my pot to make sure that it didn't dry out. So, can I have a quick raise of hands? How many of you guys are familiar with like pottery and ceramics? Okay, so you guys probably know about slipping and scoring, and while we were building up with our coils, we had to slip and score every individual layer. And what that is basically you just scratch up the surface of the clay and use wet clay to stick them together, or else they're just going to slide off later on. And so that's used for structural purposes. Now, I talked about the frame already, but as I was building up, I followed the frame. And yeah, smoothing. But I ran into a couple problems when I was building my pot, and I'm sure a lot of the other people also ran into problems. But some of the ones that I ran into is that I started out with this narrow base and I had to build out, but as I was building out, I was following this frame, and I noticed that although it followed the shape of the frame, the pot was actually getting too wide to fit in the kiln, so I had to sort of like cut out some parts and then shove the edges back together, and I ended up ditching the frame towards the end because it wasn't working out, because my pot got too big while I was following it. And then when I was building this top part, this was actually all still wet, so it was starting to collapse inward, and so those were some of the problems that I ran into when I was doing mine. And then after that, when I let it dry a little more, I carved each of these flowers in by hand, and so I spent a super long time doing that, and that took way longer than I thought it would, but after I got these designs carved in, I just let it dry, and then after it dried, we sent it into the kiln for firing. And after that, I noticed, and Mr. T noticed, he pointed this out to me, that this flower design that ran around sort of made it unbalanced because it starts out very large on one side, and then it gets smaller as it wraps around, so we decided that I should have some sort of background, and so I went back to the design prospect of it, like back to the drawing board, and I thought that these clouds would be cool. So I had to go back, while this was drying and firing, I went back and looked at cloud designs, and so traditional Korean pots, they have this weird cloud design, looks like smoke sort of, but I didn't really like that, so I just went online and I researched some clouds, and at the top here, I don't know if you can see this that well, but these are some of the reference images that I just sort of copied down into my sketchbook. And then I sort of wanted to make it my own, so I started playing with it a little more. And you can sort of tell that as it's going on, it's evolving to something different. And then I drew like 10 more clouds to find out what I really wanted to do. And some of the better ones I ended up tracing onto tracing paper that I was supposed to sketch onto here, but that didn't end up working out because I needed bigger clouds, so I didn't really use the tracing paper. And yeah. So after I got decided on the cloud design, I went on to testing glazes. So we started out with 6 of the brown clay test tiles. So the reason that it's important to differentiate between brown and white clay is because when you glaze on white clay, the colors pop a little more, and it's also heated at a hotter temperature, so the colors might not turn out exactly as you expect. So we started out with these brown test tiles, and I use these as testers, like, if you want to just test them out. And then after looking at some of the colors, I went to my model. I went back to my model, and I played with a ton of the colors, so you can see here that I ended up gridding and doing a lot of that. And one thing about glazes is that you can layer them on top of each other to create these new colors. And so celadon is this greenish jade color that you might be familiar with. And so I played a lot with blue and green glazes and layering them on top of each other. And so this was my experimentation with that. And the flowers I wanted to make white with the red center. So I was also experimenting with different whites and reds. And then after looking at some of the better colors on this, I went on to white clay. So on a single white test tile that I used to just test some more of the colors, looking at which of the ones I liked. And then once I finished that test tile, I actually drew the design on this white clay slab that I have. So this is sort of what the finished product should look like. Not exactly, but this is like the general gist of it with the colors and the design. And that took quite a while as well. Now, I went back, and this came out of the kiln about the time that I finished my test tiles. So I went back and hand drew all the clouds onto there because the tracing paper wasn't working out for me. And I ended up using this rope to measure the circumference of my pot, to measure just how far the clouds should be from each other. So I marked it with masking tape to measure. I think this is like, I forgot how many inches, but I used that to sort of distance these equally from each other on the pot. And then after I got the clouds on, I went on to glazing. So I'm still working on glazing right now. You can tell that this isn't finished. But basically what I'm doing for my glazing is I started with the flowers, which are white. You can't see the red because they're covered by a thin layer of white glaze, but these will be red, sort of light pink. And then right now I'm working on glazing the clouds. And so this is taking a while as well because there's a lot of really small details that I wanted to put on here. And these will be two colored clouds, so it'll be white and this darker green. And then the borders, you can't really see them that well because they're sort of small, but they'll also be a dark green, and the back will be this color that's called true celadon. Yeah. And then once this is done and it's all glazed and I get it fired once more, I'm hoping to do something with it. I don't really know what I'm going to do with a giant pot. I might put like bamboo in it or something, but yeah, that's the sort of creative process that I went through in designing my pot.